Good evening, everybody, and welcome to meeting number 5 of the Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force. I'm Tim Sargent, the co-chairs. Commissioner Clark cannot be with us this evening due to a previous commitment. So as we move forward, I have asked David Levine to serve as the temporary co-chair as we get through the COVID pandemic requirement notifications and notices and announcements. So with further ado, let's go ahead and get started. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by FOIA and the emergency ordinance, the Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force, also known as the Task Force, needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. First, because each member of the task force is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all of the other members. Accordingly, I'm going to conduct a roll call and ask each task force member participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you are participating. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. Following this roll call, we will vote to establish that every member can hear every other member. Starting now with Hillary Clausen.
This is Hillary Clausen. I'm at my home on Mason Neck.
Thank you, Hillary. Catherine Ward. Catherine Ward.
Yes, I'm here in my home on Gladstone Place. I can hear everybody.
Thank you. Gretchen Walt. Gretchen. Okay, no answer response from Gretchen tonight. David Levine.
Yes, hi, this is Dave Levine in my home in Alexandria, Virginia.
Thank you, David. Holly Doherty. I believe Holly is not with us this evening. Evan Kaufman.
Yes, this is Evan Kaufman reporting from Richmond, Virginia.
Thank you, Evan. Mary Payton. Mary? Mary is not with us this evening. Queenie Cox.
Queenie Cox is here. Queenie Cox
Wonderful.
is here from Gums. Okay.
Thank you, Queenie. Ellen Young.
Yes, Ellen Young. I'm here at my home in Bellevue.
Wonderful. Thank you, Ellen. And Hamid Munir. Is Hamid with us this evening? All right. Not here with us this evening. Lynn Pasco.
Len Pasco, I'm at my home in Montebello.
And Tracy Wood.
Tracy Wood in her home in Mount Vernon Terrace.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay. I believe we have a quorum of members here now.
Gretchen's here.
Oh, Gretchen?
I'm here.
Great. Thank you, Gretchen. All right.
Yep.
Now, at this point, I'm going to pass the virtual gavel to David Levine so that I may be heard to make the requisite motion. I move that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force, and I so move.
Okay, well, I thank you, Chairman Sargent, and I note the motion that each member's voice may be adequately heard by each other member of the SSPA Task Force. And I request a second to the motion from a member of the task force.
Second.
Second.
So following the second, I ask for all members to say whether they're in favor, to say aye, or opposed, say nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That's unanimous, and I believe the motion verifying audibility of members' voices has been approved unanimously.
All right, thank you. Now, second, having established that each member's voice may be heard by every other member, we must next establish the nature of the emergency that compels these emergency procedures, the fact that we are meeting electronically, what type of electronic communication is being used, and how we have arranged for public access to this meeting. Therefore, I move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for the task force to physically assemble and unsafe for the public to physically attend any such meeting, and that as such, FOIA's usual procedures, which require the physical assembly of the task force and the physical presence of the public, cannot be implemented safely or practically. I further move that the task force may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated video and audio conferencing line, and that the public may access this meeting by registering through the meeting link on the Track a Plan Amendment page of the SSPA website at https://www.fairfaxcounty.gov/plan-amendments/track-plan-amendment, or by calling 1-844-621-3956 TTY 711 and entering access code 129-613-8826, and it is so moved.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Sergeant, I will note the motion for a need for an electronic meeting, and I request a second to the motion from a member of the task force.
I'll second. This is Ellen.
Okay, thank you, Ellen. Following this second, I ask for all members to say whether they're in favor by saying aye, or opposed, say nay to the motion.
Aye.
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 Okay, I duly note that I can verify that the members have approved it unanimously.
Okay, thank you, David. Now, I need to dispense with FOIA's usual procedures to assure continuity in government or continue operations. Finally, it is next required that all of the matters addressed on today's agenda must address the emergency itself and are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government, and or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations and the discharge of the Mount Vernon District SSPA Task Force's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities, and it is so moved.
Okay, I again note that the motion is the need to dispense with FOIA's usual procedures to assure continuity in government and to continue operations, and I request a second to the motion from a member of the task force.
Tracy Wood seconds.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. So following this second, I ask for all in favor to say aye, or opposed
Aye.
to say nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The motion passes unanimously, and I turn it back over to Chairman Sargent.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Wonderful job, and the gift coupon will be in the mail.
Yeah.
All righty. We can continue with the agenda for this evening. Yes, go ahead.
This is Mary Payton. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Mary.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for joining us, Mary. Glad you can make it.
Yeah, technology is hard.
We can relate. All right, let's go ahead and start with the first. We've taken care of the administrative items on the agenda and the other instructions. Now we're moving to the preliminary staff recommendation and task force recommendation and vote. This is concerning 2806 Popkins Lane, and we're going to hear the preliminary staff recommendation for 10 minutes discussion. Do we have a member of staff to present their recommendation?
Cedric, you're the presenter now.
Hi there, good evening, everyone. Just give me a moment here to get this PowerPoint on the screen. Presentation mode. Can everyone see what's on my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, phenomenal. All right, so good evening, everyone. My name is Cedric Suzuki. I'm a planner with the Department of Planning and Development. I'm the planner assigned to 2806 Popkins Lane. So the beginning part of this presentation is going to be repetitive. It is content that has been presented to the task force at prior meetings, but with the mixed turnout that we've had during the past meetings, we just wanted to make sure that everyone got an overview of these things. So I'm going to provide a brief overview at the start. So the primary land use considerations for staff recommendation is outlined here with the actual plan text, which was distributed earlier and posted online. The recommendation would add specific language for the parcel that sets an increased density, but with conditions to create a community and environmental benefit greater than the development of the current plan. So residential, as a reminder, residential infill in Memorial Heights is planned for 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. There's additional guidance for tax map 93-1, tax numbers, which is included in Land Unit E of the Beacon Grove Inn Community Business Center within the Richmond Highway corridor. As an option, residential use up to 6 dwelling units per acre may be considered with the preservation of approximately 35% of the existing tree cover on the parcel, supplemented through native plantings and management of invasive species. Stormwater management should be achieved with benefits of the existing forested conditions and avoid conflicts with the preserved trees. Primary access to the site should be provided from Hopkins Lane with potential secondary access to Preston or Eastleigh Avenue. So just as a reminder, the area is zoned for R3. The proposed density is at 5 to 8 dwelling units per acre, which is higher than the surrounding area. Regarding the site, specifically talking about tree cover and stormwater, as we've discussed before, the front portion of the site has been developed with the Verizon switching station. It's that cleared area right around here, if you can see in my cursor. The rear portions are heavily forested, and they consist of one of the few remaining unbroken tree canopies left along the Richmond Highway corridor. The forested conditions on this site are a unique asset for the Richmond Highway corridor and provide important environmental benefits, including reducing urban heat island effect, removing air pollutants and absorbing carbon, and also providing passive stormwater benefits. In considering the amendment, staff notes that the environmental section of the policy plan supports the preservation of woodlands and tree cover on developed and developing sites using open space conservation easements when appropriate. Maximizing the amount of tree canopy through preservation rather than just replanting is also noted in the policy plan as a means for protecting county streams from impacts in new development. Of importance, we would note that under the normal by right standards, as proposed density increases, tree preservation requirements are typically reduced. For example, if the site was developed at 2 to 3 DUAC, tree preservation targets are roughly 25% of undisturbed tree canopy. If it's developed at 5 to 8 DUAC, tree preservation targets are 20% of undisturbed tree canopy. So there is a great interest in setting a higher recommendation through the site-specific planning language for the site to ensure greater preservation. Regarding the stormwater, as we discussed at prior meetings, the current forested conditions are helping to manage the legacy stormwater issues in the neighborhood, and consideration should be given to the preservation of the existing woodland as much as possible. Conversion of the site from forested cover to impervious surfaces will require significant stormwater management requirements. That being said, the existing forested conditions may be insufficient to fully address these issues, and engineered controls will likely be needed. So future development would need to carefully consider how best to achieve their stormwater management goals. In terms of guidance, our goal here is to set the expectations that stormwater controls avoid conflicting with tree preservation goals to the extent feasible. Regarding affordable housing, so the staff has discussed affordable housing quite a bit because this was one of the original greater considerations when this was authorized by the board. However, based on our standard inclusionary WDU commitment levels, if they were recommended for this site, it would actually result in very few committed units. So we're not recommending language for workforce housing as a part of this, as we believe we have sufficient justification for supporting an increased density through the achievement of environmental objectives. Just a refresher on transportation here. So the preferred primary vehicular access recommended by FCDOT would be along Hopkins Lane in the orange there. And then we have 2 potential secondary access points, which are currently cul-de-sacs that are terminating at the edge of the site along Eastleigh Avenue and Preston Avenue. These would be secondary multimodal access for pedestrians and bicyclists to help encourage traffic flow through the site, or help with the traffic flow on the site, not through the site. Apologies. So this is the reason we went through all this refresher content is that for the last 2 weeks, staff and the nominator have been working on creating these illustrative concepts to try and show what these potential considerations would look like with actual build conditions on the site. So firstly, this is a mock-up of what the Hopkins site layout may look like. This is not an actual development plan, and we're not proposing to include this in the plan. This is an illustrative graphic to showcase certain site features that are part of the staff recommendation. So what we're seeing in front of us here, this tree save area is roughly 35% of the site, tree save was prioritized in areas with challenging topography, as you can see with the dense lines here. These areas are less suitable for development, and per the policy plan, tree save has been prioritized here, in addition to areas that have been initially identified as containing desirable stands of trees. So that would be the green areas. This is 35% tree safe. This yellowish that you see, this is open space. There's about 57% of open space on the entire site. The build density that you see here translates to about 5.3 DUAC. What you're seeing is a mix of 7 detached single-family units, which are right here, and then 16 attached single-family units along here. And finally, they created a road layout with 2 different access points, one on Popkins Lane and the other from the end of the cul-de-sac here at Eastleigh. Or it could potentially be Popkins, depending on how that works out. This concept provides an incentive to preserve a greater amount of trees on the site than a by right development at the R3 zoning district, or development at the maximum adopted plan density of 4 DUAC through a moderate increase in density, up to about 6 DUAC, while also allowing for a tree save area that is higher than what the county's public facilities manual would typically require. Residential development patterns that are more economical with the arrangement and use of the site, such as attached units, have the potential to cluster development in a manner that could retain the existing forested conditions in a greater proportion. A higher density option would provide the ability for cluster development compared to the R3 single-family zoning, and that could achieve either through landscape screening or transitions in building types, a compatible transition to the surrounding Memorial Heights and Bryant Town Court neighborhoods. Given the known drainage and flooding issues in the surrounding area, development of the site that provides for stormwater controls while also retaining substantial portions of the existing tree cover may increase the capacity of the site to absorb, retain, and treat stormwater. So the actual plan text has been sent out. It's posted online. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at it. We're not posting the full thing on here. This is an outline of the staff recommendation. The recommendation would add specific language for the parcel that sets an increased density, but with conditions to create a community and environmental benefit greater than developed with the current plan. The first proportion of that would be the residential density would be increased to about 6 dwelling units per acre. As we mentioned, we would be asking for a higher percentage of tree cover, up to 35%. By right, at 2 to 3 DOC, it'd be 25% in comparison. So it's a 10% increase. And this would be supplemented with native plantings and invasive species management plan. Regarding stormwater measures, the existing forested conditions should be preserved, and any future stormwater additions to that should avoid conflicts with preserved trees. And for site access, primary access is on Popkins with secondary access on Preston and Eastleigh. Questions, comments?
Cedric,
Oh, go ahead.
just one quick question, if I could ask, just to clarify, could you go back to the slide with the bullet points for just a second? Thank you.
Yes.
Under stormwater measures, the bullet that says should achieve the benefits of the existing forested conditions, what does that mean?
So what we've heard from urban forestry and stormwater is that the current existing forested conditions are providing a decent passive benefit to the neighborhood, which has existing stormwater problems. So what we're saying regarding the stormwater language is that the stormwater controls on this site should achieve about an equivalent in terms of stormwater.
Okay, I see it in the actual text here. Okay, that makes sense. All right. Thank you. Questions from the task force?
Yes, this is Ellen.
Go ahead, Ellen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned, as you know, we all passed it forward in the first time, and I think probably without thinking about the greater consequences. And individual projects don't happen in a vacuum. So we've just lost, 22 acres of forested land just south of here. And now we're proposing just north of here where the new fire station is going in, increasing the impervious area, which is going to cause, other problems for the people behind them. And is probably in a floodplain, and we have an awful lot of flooding issues going on. And I'm just all of the problems. Why are we even considering increasing the density here? We have an option if we would we give it time by, by postponing a decision on this. We have time for Verizon to sit down and see about getting, credits for keeping this forested land. And it just seems, is there a reason why staff with all the problems went ahead and increased density?
Comments, response from staff?
This is Megan Van Dam. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Megan.
Oh, right. So we're looking at this in terms of what could be done under the adopted plan. Since this is the comprehensive plan amendment, the baseline is really what can be done in the adopted plan. So, with the adopted plan recommending residential use at 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre, that we were looking at that with the amount of tree save that would be expected under that based on the public facilities manual. And so as we were looking at this new, potential 6 dwelling units per acre, we would get a higher amount of tree save and tree preservation than we would under the adopted plan. And the adopted plan, I should say, matches the R3 zoning district that's currently designated for the site. So there isn't, there is by right potential on this site. So, I think we need to keep in mind that what this is relative to is not, in the existing conditions of forest. It's really relative to what a property owner can do by right and what they can be doing under the adopted plan.
Okay, other comments, questions?
Yeah, this is Catherine. Thank you,
Go
Megan,
ahead,
for thank you for that tidbit of information. And I agree that's kind of what the comp plan process allows you to do. However, the request is, and remains so from the last time we talked, is to have the right person at Verizon have a conversation with NVCT Alan Rosum, so everybody's on the same sheet of music about the possibilities of conserving this property and all the trees. It's not whether or not it should have a 35% save or a almost 0% save. They haven't sold the property yet. They clearly want to sell it. They want to make money. Nobody objects to that. What we are asking for is delay in a decision, have the right people at Verizon, not their tax people, but the right decision makers actually talk to NVCT. And that should be able to be done rather quickly. Mr. Rosum is ready, willing, and able to have a conversation about this. It's the Verizon people that I believe don't understand how much money they can already make if they sell the conservation credits. And that's all we're asking. That's what I'm asking, is we delay so that conversation can be had. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Other questions or comments?
Yeah,
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay, one at a time. Please, who spoke first before Mary?
Gretchen,
Gretchen, go ahead, please, and then Mary.
I'd like to second on to Catherine because I think it's a really good idea and it's an opportunity we don't want to throw away.
All righty. Mary?
Yeah, I'll
Mary,
agree to, yeah, I'm good with the proposal, but I'm also very confused about the stormwater situation. The first time we looked at this thing way back when, the planning said it needs to be developed so it can have better stormwater management. And now it's getting developed, but it's going to have the same degree of stormwater management as the natural situation. The natural situation doesn't seem to be handling everything. I don't know what the situation is. I've been there and it doesn't look good, but I don't the county can go out there and figure it out. I just haven't heard a real coherent report that says one thing about what the stormwater situation is and what would improve it.
Hi, Mary. Just to clarify, the neighborhood Memorial Heights was built before the county stormwater policies were put in place. So Memorial Heights, the buildings are set on smaller lots. They're half an acre to a quarter acre, single family detached homes. And because of that, it's led to, there's just a lot of sheet runoff that's been flowing downstream. So the pop-in site, as it is right now, is actually helping to not necessarily mitigate, but it is helping address some of the existing stormwater problems. So what we're saying for stormwater is not necessarily that it has to be identical and that whatever they're building is going to be identical in impact to the natural features, but simply that it shouldn't be any worse than it is, if that makes sense. Because realistically, if they pursue development on this site, they'll be going for a mix of natural features. So the tree save area will provide passive stormwater, and then there's going to be additional stormwater, like physical stormwater infrastructure that's going to work with that hand in hand.
Thanks, Cedric. Mary, did that help?
Yes, it sounds like you're going to try to retain the current level of stormwater control on the property, yet there's still a problem in the neighborhood.
And
Okay.
Mary, it'll need to meet when it's going through the entitlement process, it'll need to meet the codes and the regulations, but with the language that's proposed in our staff recommendation, we're recommending that because we have tree cover as an objective and as a preservation goal, that the stormwater management objectives that we're able to meet with engineering controls don't conflict with this other goal, which we have, which is preservation, because it's, as Cedric was explaining, it provides good forested conditions that help to absorb and treat stormwater today. So it's not engineered yet, so we don't want to provide some more specifics in terms of what the target might be. The language that we have here, we've vetted it with our stormwater planning division, and they're comfortable that we can work with the policy language that we have here. Should this be brought forward through an entitlement process?
This is Catherine. Can I respond to Mary just quickly? And this would be an infill development when and if it should ever happen. Also, the current by right would be an infill development. Fairfax County is awash with stormwater problems running off into older neighborhoods. And consultants for the county went around with a bunch of the neighbors last night in the Mount Vernon district to probably 12 sites where we've had infill development, where the folks in the older houses were showing what tragedies they were having. And this was after these infills were engineered to manage stormwater, and new drains, those big bunker looking things, were installed in properties. But the little houses next door, the smaller properties, are still becoming swamps whenever it rains because it's just not working. So that already exists now as a problem. And that's not against the county. They're doing their best and they know they've got a problem, and their stormwater people are working on some options to try to correct it. But we have a problem in Mount Vernon district with respect to infill and massive stormwater flow. So I'm back to, again, the recommendation, and if it needs to be a motion, I'll make a motion now, that we delay this decision, that the right people work with Northern Virginia Conservation Land Trust people at Verizon to create a conversation so Verizon can make a decision if maybe they'd like to go in that direction, as opposed to just blithely saying, nope, we don't want to do this. So I make a motion.
Well, can before the motion, I just have I'd like to get a clarification, Catherine, if it's okay with you for a moment.
Sure.
Okay, and that is, didn't we hear from a environmentalist person who talked about the tree covering and the flooding, and he didn't particularly support this increased density? Or am I on the wrong?
No, you did. That's the staff report that was done prior to this one. If I can step into the staff's role here for a second, did in fact have the environmental people saying that going forward with multiple increased density was not to their liking, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's in the original staff report.
Okay, that's all I want. I just wanted that clarification before we got into the motion, and then I wouldn't be able to ask my question.
So Queenie, if I may jump in to clarify, because it was regarding staff's recommendation. We've vetted this language with all of the relevant departments that would be charged with reviewing a future entitlement application and helping us in terms of setting out our recommendation, including the urban forestry department. And so we've vetted this language with them, and they vetted it, and they're comfortable with it. So I think that we had a discussion with them earlier in the task force process regarding tree cover, and I think that an urban forestry department is always going to be in favor of more as opposed to less. But I think that they understand, given the existing by right condition and what you would have in a development scenario, which is 25% cover requirement for the per the standard regulations, that what we're setting out to achieve here with 35% is superior. So they understand that, and they understand why we've come up with this language. They vetted it. Don't have any problems with it.
Right. And once again, the motion to delay so we can get Verizon and the right people at Verizon and NVCT to talk to each other does not negate the current recommendation by staff for 6 dwelling units per acre and 35%. It just delays that decision. That's the request. That's the motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Actually, before we get to that, could I? This is David.
Point of order, buddy. Point of order. I'm sorry, this is the chairman. Catherine, we will get to your motion, but I think we have other members who have some questions first, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Do we have other questions or comments first?
Yes, we do. This is David.
David, go ahead.
Just again, I support Catherine's motion. And I think that's worth doing, is to have that conversation with Verizon and the land trust. But before that, I want to go back to the staff recommendation, because you are dropping the WDU commitment on this site. And I think, Cedric, you mentioned that it doesn't cross a minimum threshold for number of units. Is that the reason?
Yeah, so without staff recommendation, there's affordable housing regulations don't apply. Oh, apologies. Affordable housing regulations don't apply to the development without a staff recommendation. And if we did apply the recommendation to it, Graham, feel free to correct me on this, but I believe it was 4 units for sale, and then 3 units. Sorry, I believe.
So
4 for sale. Sorry, go ahead, Graham.
Yeah, sorry, Cedric. So, David, so in terms of the WDUs, when we were looking at it, if you were to do the maximum in terms of what was authorized by the board, which is the upper end of 5 to 8 units to the acre, you just want to 1 units to the acre with a yield of 33 units. That's only applying a 12% inclusionary requirement, which is what WDUs are for sale. You'd only get 3.96 units, of which as we go through with the WDU policy plan amendment, for sale, only a third of that would be provided at 80% of the area median income and below. So given that, if we're only looking at 1, maybe potentially 2 units, if we were to apply a standard commitment level and a standard AMIs. So in terms of specifying an increase in density, we have justification for supporting it based on the policy guidance that allows for, or notes that there's an overarching consideration for higher density if you're going to be looking at affordable housing. But given that the yield on this is going to be so low, I mean, we're talking about 1, potentially 2 or 3 units of workforce. We felt that, especially given the light that the tree LP targets and the tree preservation and environmental objectives have kind of come to fruition, not just from the task force's mind, but also from staff's mind, that seemed to be a better justification for supporting an increased intensity on the site, given that we'd have the ability to achieve superior standards and superior recommendations above the baseline of development in the by right condition. So it was very much an intentional thing in terms of our thinking and our shift away from using or having affordable housing be a justification to the tree preservation.
I see. Okay, well, thanks, Brad.
Yep. This is Megan. If I may, I'd also like to say that there still would be a contribution made to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Even though the units aren't being provided on site, there's still, the county would recommend, and based on our policy, that a financial contribution is made by the developer. So there still would be some contribution towards affordable housing. It just wouldn't be, as Graham has described, the units would not be provided on site.
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah. But Megan, let me ask you this, but with that contribution that would be made, it would not benefit Mount Vernon though, would it? Or would the contribution could be specifically, could the contribution be specific for Mount Vernon?
That's a good question. I mean, it would come through as a proffer.
That's a great question.
Right. I mean, I guess there could be potentially a proffer written, but we can talk to the housing department about that, about if there's some, I don't know, limitations for fair housing or something like that, that might come into play.
Are there other questions or comments from the task force members?
Well,
I think Queen has a great idea there.
Well, and I guess the last thing that popped in my head was when we were seeing the, I guess, the proposed language from the staff. And when it talks about it says potential for an unmapped floodplain on the property. So what does that mean? And what happens if it's a mapped floodplain?
Hey, Queenie, if you allow me a moment, I can pull up a graphic that Stormwater sent to us that kind of shows the drainage area that affects the site. If that'll help clarify kind of the scope of this. A second here. Can everyone see this?
Not yet. There it is.
Okay, perfect. So what you're seeing here, this is the subject site, 2806 Poppins Lane. So this is roughly about a 9-acre drainage area. This is where the water flow on the site kind of goes to. So it like trickles from the cul-de-sac here, pours onto the site, comes into these neighborhoods here, including the townhouse development down here. Like there's if you look on it, the topography also suggests that it's not a stream that goes through here. The county doesn't recognize it as a stream, but it is kind of like a flow channel or a flow area where a lot of water goes through during storm events.
Is that white thing, Cedric, that kind of goes through? That's not a stream. That's
No. I think it's somewhere in this portion of the site, I believe. The retention pond that you see here that was built at the townhouse development was specifically made with that in mind, to try and counter some of that flow. Where whenever any of these adjacent sites is getting redeveloped, they usually do have some kind of stormwater improvement that comes along with it.
Okay.
And again, this is Megan. I mean, I think as far as the unmapped floodplain, that would be the analysis and the engineering of the site would happen as part of the rezoning to determine if there is a floodplain on the site and to avoid developing homes within that. So that would be part of the analysis that would be done, at a very finer grain level during the zoning case.
Any further questions or comments? Because I have one for staff in terms of process.
This is Hillary Clausen.
Go
As
ahead.
you probably realize, I am not as knowledgeable as many of you are in this area, and I'm new to this task force. What is the advantage to the county and the surrounding community in allowing the increased density?
Tax money.
And let's ask staff.
So,
I don't
Hillary,
know if we have, oh, go ahead, Graham.
Let's ask Megan. Go ahead, Megan. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Megan.
The advantage is that there would be a higher level of tree preservation percentage on the site. So if the property were to develop, and Cedric's going to have to help me if I get this wrong, but if the site were to develop at by right for an R3, then there would be about, I think it's about 25% tree preservation and tree cover. If the site were to develop if they were to rezone for an R4, it would drop down to 20%. And so the R3 is what you could do by right. The R4 would involve a zoning case. But the advantage of going and having this plan recommendation for going up to the 6 dwelling units per acre would be that there would be language in the plan that would recommend 35% tree preservation, and so there would be that increment of higher tree preservation because of this higher density. So the way that we looked at it in that concept is that even though you have more units on site, we would look to having the developer cluster the units so that there would be more room for negotiation with that versus a by right development, so that you could look at where are the trees that are healthy, mature, and worthy of saving, and then trying to avoid those areas, or potentially look at different options for drainage and potential stormwater management areas too. So there would be more of a negotiation ability and a higher level of tree preservation coming through with the higher density.
So in
Can
essence,
I
you're
ask a
saying,
question?
Just a second later.
say in essence, you're saying it's an environmental issue?
I'm sorry, I didn't, there was.
In essence, are you saying it's primarily an environmental issue?
Yes, the county would have a higher environmental benefit from the higher density.
Okay, thank you.
Hillary,
Lynn, you're next.
Yeah, I was just going to have a question. I understand the value of preserving trees, and I understand, the interest of going along with this, and I understand the by right problem out there. But I don't really understand if there's any real problem with, with the original motion. I mean, it does seem to me, so what if we're not going at any great speed around here? And so what if we delay 2 or 3, 4 months? Is it going to make any real difference?
I'll ask staff to respond to that one.
So I think it kind of gets back to kind of what we have in terms of the expectations for the task force and the process that we have for the plan amendments. If there is interest in looking at a deferral of the task force, what we would say is that this is one that has been identified by the board for expediting, and attached to that is a 6-month turnaround between when it's authorized and when the board would like to take action on it. So we've been fitting this into that schedule. I think that in terms of a deferral, if there is interested in having the task force defer, I would recommend a much shorter time frame so that we can stick with that expedited schedule that the board has requested that this go. And I think that for example, if it's for a week, and there's interest in having, the task force suggests that that there be additional conversations during that time frame. I think that we would, on our end of things, we can absorb a deferral for a week, and it wouldn't jeopardize the track that we've put this plan amendment on, that the board has requested that it return to them by, and still allow for the task force to make a consideration. My fear is that if it's for a longer period of time, that there's a deferral, that staff need to advance a recommendation to the planning commission and to the board for the authorization. So there might be additional ways that this could be transmitted if it's if the answer is that there's insufficient time or insufficient information beyond a week. But I think in terms of deferral, I would suggest a shorter time frame so that we could keep it on the schedule that we have, because we do on the staff end do need to make a recommendation on the board authorization, and per the guide that we have through SSPA, the task should do the same as well. So it might be a yes vote, it might be a no vote, it might be a modification to the board's authorization, but there does, through the process, there needs to be a recommendation of what we have before us.
Thank you for that, Graham. Without making this dreadfully complicated, I can assure you that the people from MVCT are ready, willing, and able, and they've actually been trying to get a hold of the right people at Verizon and getting a big fat nothing because they're not sure who the real decision makers are. And there seems to be multiple people. There's the tax end of it who's hired the lawyers, and that's fine. And then there's the real estate people from headquarters at Verizon who knew nothing about any of this. But there's somewhere in their government affairs, I'm assuming, I don't know. But I think if the county or whomever can assist in getting Mr. Rossum access to the right decision makers, that a conversation could be had within a couple of weeks. And, then Verizon can chew on it internally and a decision can come back to us and we can move forward whichever direction we're going. But if my motion gets voted on, and then there's stalling from whomever to get MVCT with the right of Verizon people, then we have kind of a dilemma with not keeping the faith with the task force, if that's the way the task force wants to go. And can I ask a question about the stormwater, please?
Go ahead, Catherine.
On the stormwater management stuff, you don't have a lot of land to do the stormwater ponds or whatever you're doing. What is the concept? Are you going to require them to do it underground? Are they going to put in stormwater ponds? If they're going to do that, we know from lots of information provided through the Mount Vernon Council and environmental committees over time is that the stormwater ponds that are created are not healthy. They create all kinds of problems. They're not well managed. So what's the thought on that when we get to that point?
This is Megan. Yeah, they could. Oh.
Go ahead,
Megan. So what we had been in our concept, we showed potentially an area that could be an underground vault, and then on top of it, perhaps you could double it as potentially the open space, and as long as there's not anything that has a substantial sort of structure on it. I think they could also go forward with BMPs. You could do swales or some type of rain garden that could add to it, and also double as open space as well. So there are some options that we had talked
Okay.
about with
Great.
with the
Okay,
stormwater planners.
Thank you, Megan.
Other questions, comments? All righty. Do we need to go through a procedure of saying, you're asking, Catherine, the point of your motion is a deferral at this point, correct?
Yes, sir. The point of my motion is a deferral. Let's say 3 weeks in deference to poor Graham wanting to get their paperwork in order, and I can appreciate all that. So I personally think you can get these folks together within 3 weeks so they can have a good conversation and then report back to all of us on which direction they want to go in, and then we can vote whether we accept the new staff recommendation or not. So I move that we delay for 3 weeks, allowing time for and having the county assist MVCT in communicating with the proper people at Verizon who can actually make a decision on this project. And at the end of that period of time, whether we have Verizon on board or not, if they're on board, obviously there's no reason to move forward with this. If they're not on board, then we have a vote on whether we accept the staff's recommendation. Does that make sense?
Might I suggest a slightly tighter motion? Your time frame for deferral, and your point about assistance regarding communication with Verizon.
Well, the assistant means finding the right person, and when this conversation came up last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, Sherry was very kind to call her person who has hired her company to present this case to you guys, to us guys. And that individual's remark was astounding to me, that because Verizon is a publicly traded company, they couldn't possibly do this because their stockholders wouldn't understand. That's someone that clearly does not understand how much money you can get by selling tax credits. So that's just not the right person to go to. With all deference to Sherry, she did her best, but somebody has got to help us figure out who the real decision maker is. And so far, MVCT hasn't been able to find that person. So I'm only suggesting that maybe somebody at the county knows who the real crew chief is that they can talk to. That's all.
Okay, let me check with Graham and Megan. In terms of a deferral, how much time beyond a week do you have? Can we take here if the task force goes this route? Is 2 weeks too long? Is 3 weeks too long?
Before I answer that, we can definitely do a week. I think we can certainly absorb that. Three makes me a bit frightened. What I would mention, Catherine noted that Sherry has been the nominator for this, and she's on the call. And so I think that a large part of the communication that's being proposed, has to do with her, and we would lean on her to kind of kickstart those discussions. So I just wanted to mention that she's on the call if you wanted to hear from her and see what was kind of, what her thoughts were on all this. So I think that she, has an interest in the plan amendment, seeing as she was the original nominator.
Okay. Would the task force like to hear from Sherry Aiken?
Sure.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Sherry, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear and see me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. I did something right then.
Comments regarding a deferral, so for additional communication to Verizon.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for letting me have the opportunity to speak. I really, first off, just would like to recognize and thank staff for the tremendous effort that they put in for this nomination, as well as all of them, really. Their review thoroughness and hard work is really apparent, and I wanted to acknowledge and express my appreciation for that. I am in agreement with staff's recommended language. I think it's achievable. I think it's reasonable. I think the benefits of changing the comprehensive plan language to possibly allow a development application to come through would be more of a benefit for this site as well as the surrounding community. We've talked a lot about the stormwater management benefits. And, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't want to start a whole other dialogue, but when a developer goes through, they also have to fix downstream problems up to, I don't know, it used to be a half a mile. I'm not sure what the distance is, but it's not just this site that they have to fix, but they have to take into account the surrounding area. So there really is benefits for that known storm drainage problem that exists today. If the task force would like to defer for a week, I'm sure I can contact my contact at Verizon. He's in their real estate and has been with them for a tremendous amount of years and knows the correct person if it was not him who made that decision. So I am happy and fine to accept a deferral.
Okay, thank you, Sherry. I know it's going, we're somewhere between 1 week and 3 weeks. Is there a compromise here with staff that we could use a little bit longer, or? I mean, if we're looking at a week from this meeting, do we have time for a meeting? What night would a week from tonight be?
A week from tonight would be the 4th of May. So looking at, if we were to retain the Tuesdays that we've been doing with the task force, it'd be the 4th of May.
Just for me, it does not work for me. I've got a town hall here. I suggest, why don't we split the difference? 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
Okay.
I agree with that. Oh. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, let's, all right. What night is 2 weeks from now?
The 11th,
The 11th?
May
Okay.
11th.
Do we have something, Planning Commission have something else on the 11th? I can't remember. Or is that a daytime thing? Maybe a daytime thing.
Well, then if you push it out another week, you're giving Catherine what she originally motioned for, 3 weeks. Which would be
Well,
the
does it,
18th.
yeah, does it have to stay on a Tuesday? I mean, not to
Well-
make everybody miserable, but
Staff, Planning Commission, we've got Wednesday and Thursday meetings usually. I don't have the schedule in front of me. Staff, usually escorts us into those meetings, so I don't know how available
what
someone
about
would
the,
be.
what about the 10th?
Pull up the calendar. It's a Monday. It's a Monday.
That's Monday.
That's coming, but
Who?
it's not
I
this
think we
coming
could probably
Monday.
make, yeah, the 10th or the 11th, if there's interest in doing that week. Aaron, Cedric, if you're available those days, I think I'm available Monday and Tuesday, 10th or the 11th.
Okay.
I mean, not to make this complicated, but we already know what the staff's proposal is. We've heard what the nominator would like to do. We know what the current comp plan says. All we're asking for is a time, let's say 2 weeks, to get MVCT together with the real person at Verizon to make a decision. If Verizon says, yeah, sure, we'd love to have the money out of a conservation easement, then this thing gets pulled. If they say no, then our getting together is going to be very short. No, this didn't work. Here's how come it won't work. Now we vote. So I don't think it needs lots of conversation to do the vote, but that's, because we've already heard it all.
Good. Graham, could we do Monday, the 10th?
I could do that. I don't know. Megan, Aaron, are you all available?
Yeah, that's fine.
Megan, is that okay?
Yes, that's fine with me.
Okay. So Catherine, why don't you re-edit your motion to say a deferral until, for lack of a better term, a date certain of Monday,
Okay.
May 11th. May 10th, excuse me.
May 10th. Okay. Sorry, Tim. I make a motion that we defer rather, the decision on Hopkins Lane nomination until a date certain of 10 May, 10 May, to allow time for the appropriate Verizon people and NVCT, Alan Rosum, to discuss conservation easements on this property. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, I heard several seconds.
Gretchen
I wanna
will
make sure
second.
Gretchen will second, okay.
Mhm.
All righty, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes and the deferral is until May 10th, when we'll meet again. I'm assuming we can meet again at 6:30 PM?
Yeah.
Graham, is that okay?
Fine with me.
Okay.
Thank
I hope that
thank
works
you
for
all
everybody.
very much. I think this is for the benefit of Fairfax County as a whole. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that, do we have any other further business? Do we need to conclude, or are we, Graham, have we covered everything we need for the night?
That covered it. Yeah.
Okay, everybody, thank you very much for for your input and for your considerations here. Sherry Aiken, thank you very much for sticking with us through this part of the process. We appreciate all the input we've received from staff and from our great task force and everybody else. We look forward to the meeting on the 10th to reach a culmination of this very well vetted process. Appreciate everybody's input. So with that, do I hear a motion to it?
I have one
And-
question. Sherry offered her services, and thank you very much, Sherry, for helping Alan navigate through the Verizon system to the right person. So would it be appropriate for me to send an email, or should you do it, Tim? Or how should I connect Sherry with Alan? Or how do they get connected? What should we do?
Why don't you send an email that we can forward? So we will.
Catherine, if you like, this is Nick with Supervisor Stork's office. I can forward Alan's email to Sherry to connect the two of them.
That sounds
Okay.
reasonable.
Yeah, however you want to do it. That's lovely. Thank you very much, Nick.
No problem.
Okay. Thank you. So with that, do I hear we don't have any further items on the agenda, I don't believe. Any further? I think we're completely done. So there will be a meeting on Monday, May 10th, 6:30 PM. And with that, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second,
Motion made by Lynn and seconded by
Gretchen.
Gretchen. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the
Mute
motion
them.
passes. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Tim. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you all.